The car door opened. Erica and Little Wolf Girl stepped out first, followed by Gambit, Blade, and Deadpool from the back seat. "It's you, clowns," Juggernaut said with a sinister grin. Bang! A flash of red mist and Red Devil materialized before them, his eyes cold and hard. And me! A figure wreathed in flames descended and landed in front of Erica and the others. Human Torch. He planted his hands on his hips, chest thrust out and chin raised. "Jonathan, you're blocking my spotlight." Erica snapped, her eye twitching. "Oh, my bad, my bad." The Human Torch, who had just been striking a dramatic pose, sheepishly retreated to the side and tried to regain his composure. Silence. The other side exchanged looks. Was he serious? The trunk of Deadpool's car suddenly popped open. Wolverine, still in his classic battlesuit, climbed out. "I thought you weren't coming," Gambit said with a smile. Wolverine stretched, cracking his knuckles, and grinned. "How can a fight start without me?" "This is going to be epic," Blade said, eager. "Yo-ho!" Human Torch shouted, trying to rally everyone. Erica showed her weapons, Wolverine extended his claws, and Little Wolf Girl pulled sunglasses from her pocket and put them on. Then 4 identical claws slid out from her hands. "Leave these guys to us. Go get what you came for," Blade said, drawing his katana. He also slipped a hand to a gun in a holster, reasonable for a daywalker vampire who can't rely on superpowers like other heroes. Across from them, Red Devil teleported from left to right, changing position constantly, some tactic, or maybe just showboating. Both sides tensed, fingers on triggers and claws flexed. A voice shouted from above. Dozens of eyes looked up. Standing on the giant, ruined head of Ant-Man's corpse was a familiar figure. "I'm here to help," Xiao Ran called, pointing dramatically. Deadpool went pale. "You?" Nobody else recognized him at first. Deadpool's terrified reaction made it look personal. "You again, stealing my spotlight," Deadpool howled. Erica and Little Wolf Girl exchanged a look and silently communicated that this wasn't the moment to settle old scores. Xiao Ran landed on Deadpool's side of the formation with a grin. "Miss me?" He waved at Human Torch and then at Wolverine. "Drunk Wolf, hello," he said cheerfully. Wolverine rolled his eyes. "It's you, you bastard." Juggernaut and Red Devil's faces hardened into expressions of pure hatred. "Oh, it's you two," Xiao Ran said with exaggerated innocence. "We are not good at all," they snapped in unison. Since Xiao Ran had stolen Cassandra's sling ring, Cassandra had been furious, hitting and berating them non-stop. Their nerves were shot, and all their outrage had been redirected toward the man who'd set it off. "How did you piss them off?" Human Torch asked quietly. "I didn't." Xiao Ran spread his hands, looking innocent. "I thought we were good." "Good my ass," Red Devil spat. "If you hadn't stolen Cassandra's treasure, we wouldn't be living like this." He tapped the dark circles under his eyes. "See? All thanks to you." Xiao Ran feigned ignorance. "Oh, I thought that was a new look. Honestly, it suits you." Red Devil unleashed a torrent of curses. Juggernaut snorted, like an enraged bull. "I'll tear him apart," he bellowed. "Then hand him to me. I'll chop him into mince." Red Devil's tail flicked in anticipation. "All right, you two are really angry," Xiao Ran shrugged, smiling. "But you can't beat me, so stop dreaming." "Shut up," Red Devil roared. Juggernaut lunged without hesitation. "Charge!" Blade shouted and both sides collided. Juggernaut barreled forward and grabbed Xiao Ran by the shoulders as if to rip him in two. No matter how hard he pulled, Xiao Ran just smiled back, unruffled. "Are you done tearing?" Xiao Ran asked casually. Juggernaut's face turned red as he held his breath, straining against the impossible calm of the man before him. But he couldn't shake Xiao Ran in the slightest. The next second, he swung a furious punch at Xiao Ran's face. "No, no, no, that won't do." Xiao Ran caught the fist with one hand, his fingers clamping around the Juggernaut's knuckles like a set of pliers, holding him completely immobile. "I already told you, you're too weak. You can't beat me," he said, then cocked his other fist. "Now it's my turn. You hit me once, I hit you once. Fair's fair." He punched the Juggernaut standing right in front of him. In the next instant, bang! A spray of flesh and blood fanned out, splattering the faces of Cassandra's thugs. The men who had rushed forward stood frozen, staring in shock at the Juggernaut, whose entire upper body had been wiped away. The heavy helmet clanged to the floor. Xiao Ran disgustedly tossed aside the severed arm he had been holding and looked at the remaining thugs with a grin. And the other one, where did he go? He turned and saw the Red Devil, who had teleported behind him and raised a dagger to stab down. But the Red Devil's expression was pure terror, and his arm was frozen midair, the blade powerless. He stayed rigid until Xiao Ran turned, took the dagger from his fingers, and examined it. "A nice antique," Xiao Ran said, tucking it away. Then he grabbed the Red Devil by the head. "Still want to chop me into pieces?" The Red Devil's eyes went wide. It wasn't that he didn't want to resist, he simply couldn't. Xiao Ran had used Cassandra's power to freeze him, an ability the Red Devil knew too well. "You figured it out," Xiao Ran said lazily. "I was too bored to ask." With a single motion, he crushed the Red Devil's skull. The headless body collapsed with a heavy thud, raising a cloud of dust. Xiao Ran turned back to Cassandra's men and made a small, dismissive wave. Dozens of thugs converged instantly, piling together until they formed a grotesque, rolling ball of flesh. Xiao Ran flicked his index finger and the human mass shot forward, vanishing over 10 kilometers away in an instant. Whatever lay in that destination, those men were gone, dead for sure. "I got it," Deadpool crowed, scooping up the Juggernaut's helmet. "Let's go upstairs." Wolverine watched Xiao Ran stroll forward as if taking a casual walk, and with the slightest gestures, whole mutants fell dead. He couldn't help feeling unnerved. This young man was terrifying. They pushed forward and found their way to the top. Ant-Man's corpse lay there, and when they checked, Cassandra was nowhere to be found. "Where is she?" Deadpool searched, even lifting the carpet to look under it. Wolverine scanned the room and then looked back over his shoulder. "Looking for that crazy woman?" Fireman appeared out of nowhere, grinning. "Last I heard, she left last night. No one knows where she went now." "Where did she go?" Wolverine snapped, his claws out, menace in his voice. "Hey, didn't I say we don't know?" Fireman answered, smirking and pointing at Wolverine's extended claws. "Besides, do you really think those will—" He spread his fingers and a ball of flame suddenly flared in his palm. He laughed, triumphant. Xiao Ran gave Fireman one look and then, with a heavy slap, sent him sprawling. "What's this idiot laughing about?" he asked Wolverine and Deadpool. Wolverine, staring down at the smoking, winded Fireman, muttered, "You're right, he's an idiot." He trailed off as Xiao Ran, annoyed, stomped down. The man's head burst open with a sickening crunch. "Is everything taken care of downstairs?" Xiao Ran asked. "They're all dead," Wolverine replied. Xiao Ran walked over and pinched the muscle on Wolverine's arm. "It's real," he murmured. Wolverine fell silent, watching him. He couldn't help but think, "I'm not about to fake my muscles just to fool anyone." A notification chimed. Ding. "Do you want to extract the character entry for target character Logan Howlett? Detected that target character Logan Howlett has multiple character entries. Please choose one to extract." A list unfolded before Xiao Ran's eyes. Unning body. You possess super strong self-healing abilities. Unless your head is severed or you are crushed into meat paste, even severed limbs can regenerate. You possess a lifespan far exceeding that of ordinary people, capable of living for hundreds of years. Werewolf. This werewolf is not that werewolf. You will gain a pair of adamantium alloy claws. Logan had 3 entries. The first and second overlapped. Gaining the first essentially granted the second, so Xiao Ran didn't extract anything yet. He moved over to Deadpool, who was still rifling through the room, and pulled him upright. "Hey, I almost found her," Deadpool said. "No, you won't find her. She's not even here," Xiao Ran replied, then glanced at Deadpool's character entry. Ding. Do you want to extract the character entry for target character Wade Winston Wilson? Detected that target character, Wade Winston Wilson, has multiple character entries. Please choose one to extract. Another list unfurled. Undying body. Even if only a head remains, you can survive and regrow a complete new body slowly. Similarly, if your head is gone, a new head can regrow. Super soldier. You are proficient in the use of various weapons and combat methods. You are a true super soldier. Motor mouth. You will become a motor mouth, feeling uncomfortable if you don't speak for a minute. You can break the fourth wall and communicate with people beyond it, but do you think that's real? No, that's just what they want you to think. Deadpool had one more entry than Wolverine, 4 in all. The last one was the most intriguing, the ability to break the fourth wall. But the entry itself warned against believing what it showed. The other side, Deadpool could talk to was nothing but fictional content created by comic artists in some true reality. It was still fake. If it were truly possible to bridge the barrier between fiction and reality, Xiao Ran thought, he'd be very interested. But as the entry described it, this ability only connected to another layer of fiction. Chapter 63. Where did Cassandra go? Deadpool Army. It's a pity it was a fake. Never mind. System. Extract the Undying Body entry from Deadpool. Both entries were Undying Body, but Deadpool's was stronger than Wolverine's. With no better option, Xiao Ran extracted Deadpool's entry. At least it would be useful. The Kryptonian bloodline let him heal under sunlight, but it required sunlight and had weaknesses. No kryptonite, and it couldn't save him from catastrophic injuries like a head blown to pieces. Cassandra's power could heal too, but it relied on mental strength and could be countered. Deadpool's undying body was different. It wasn't tied to strange conditions or psychic power. It was pure regenerative immortality, and it wasn't a mutant gene that could be neutralized by an antidote. Ding. Extraction successful. Xiao Ran opened the system character panel and checked the result. Name, Xiao Ran. Gender, male. Lifespan, 17,600 years. Strength, 1.72 million tons. Defense, can withstand a 20 million ton equivalent nuclear explosion. Speed, Mach 420. Bloodline, Kryptonian. Bloodline superpowers, Undying Body, Infinite Rage. Extracted entries, Steel Body Big Boss, True Big Boss, Infinite Rage, Undying Body. Extractable times, 0. The extraction bumped his lifespan cap up by 200 years, though that wasn't a pressing concern. He could keep his cells young if he wanted. Staying mentally and physically around 25 was fine. At 17, there was still room to grow. Do you know where she went? Wolverine asked, walking over. I don't know, Xiao Ran said, shaking his head. Wolverine stared at him. After all that, you don't know either? You sounded so confident. How are things on your side? He asked. Little Wolf Girl and the others arrived then. Eros is coming. Haven't you found anything? No, she's gone. Not here, Wolverine replied. Human Torch visibly relaxed. Xiao Ran looked at him. How are you still alive? He asked. Human Torch blinked. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be alive? Xiao Ran turned to Wolverine, pointing at Human Torch. Wolverine shook his head. He didn't recognize the guy at all. Probably the butterfly effect. Because of whatever changes Xiao Ran had made, Human Torch never crossed paths with Deadpool and Wolverine, and thus avoided Cassandra's revenge. That was definitely a good thing for Human Torch. Since Cassandra isn't here, let's get out of here, Erica said, glancing at Xiao Ran before addressing the group. Nobody objected. They'd come ready to risk their lives, but now that escape was possible. Why throw it away? It was better to run and hide. Eros was no joke. Even the strong avoided confronting that monster. Emerging from Ant-Man's skull, Xiao Ran looked up and saw Eros looming on the horizon, half the sky swallowed by its bulk. He wondered briefly if Eros had a character entry. After all, it was a creature and should. But Eros devoured everything in one gulp, regardless of strength. Besides, he had no extraction attempts left, and he doubted he could survive being eaten right now. Best to avoid poking at that edge. They ran away from Cassandra's camp, keeping low so Human Torch didn't fly and draw Eros's attention. After a long sprint, they finally reached what felt like a safe distance. This should be safe enough for now, Erica said, then looked at Deadpool and Wolverine. What about you two? Since you can't find Cassandra, do you want to come with us? Deadpool kicked a rock in frustration. What's wrong with him? Human Torch asked, curious. His world only has a few hours left, Wolverine explained. He then turned to Erica and the others. Does anyone know another way out of this place? Several shook their heads. If they'd known, they'd have left long ago. You want to get out? Xiao Ran asked. Wolverine nodded. Yes. Do you know a way? Xiao Ran surprised himself by nodding back. Yes. You have a way out of this damned place? Everyone stared at him. Deadpool, who'd been kicking stones, lunged forward with a whoosh. Xiao Ran sidestepped with an involuntary grimace. Deadpool crashed to the ground with a thud. Chapter 64, Section 64. Yes, 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 you can draw circles. You can draw that circle. Deadpool, stretched out on the pavement, lifted his head and shouted at the top of his lungs. I thought you'd forgotten, Xiao Ran said with a smile, glancing at him before taking out a sling ring and slipping it on. Isn't that Cassandra's ring? The Human Torch asked. It is, Xiao Ran admitted, smiling. Then he opened a dimensional gate to Deadpool's universe right in front of everyone. So that's what you stole from Cassandra? Erica said, remembering how Juggernaut and Red Devil had been accused of swiping something from Cassandra, which had made her furious. What do you mean stole? I took it, Xiao Ran protested. Everyone. So that's what you were looking for? Gambit asked, staring at Deadpool and Wolverine in disbelief. Wolverine spread his hands and shrugged. On the ground, Deadpool had already scrambled to his feet, crawled forward on all fours, and then dove headfirst through the portal. Come on, are you coming? Xiao Ran called to the others and walked through the gate himself. They stepped into Deadpool's world. Deadpool stood in the middle of the road, yelling stupidly at the sky, attracting the gaze of the gathered locals. One by one, the rest of the group emerged through the gate behind Xiao Ran. He closed it quickly. No point in letting any more strange things spill out. Cassandra could be dealt with later. She was a bright, annoying spark in the dark and always easy to find. Go on. Aren't you going to save your world? Xiao Ran said to Deadpool, who was still squealing. Right, almost forgot. Deadpool snapped back, looked around wildly, then pointed toward a nearby subway entrance. It's over there! He ran for it. Hey, who's going to destroy your world? The Human Torch called out, catching up and grabbing Deadpool to ask curiously. The others moved with them toward the subway. Then a few unexpected barks made Deadpool freeze. Sweetheart, he cried, turning toward the sound. At the intersection, another doorway tore open, a TVA portal, and a scruffy little dog with its tongue lolling came bounding out, barking at full volume. Deadpool opened his arms and beamed. Sweetheart, come to Daddy! Xiao Ran stared. He still didn't understand Deadpool's taste. That dog was filthy. Who had opened that portal? A familiar figure stepped through behind the dog, a yellow trench coat, a bald head, and sharp eyes that held malice. Cassandra. I found you, she announced the instant she saw Xiao Ran, a ferocious grin splitting her face. Shit, it's Cassandra! The Human Torch yelped, nearly jumping out of his boots. Cassandra glanced at him with barely concealed amusement. Oh, it's you, little firefly. She mocked. No, it's not me. You've got the wrong person. The Human Torch squeaked, folding in on himself. Erica, disgusted, pushed his hand down. Stop being ridiculous, she snapped. Cassandra tilted her head and swept the group with a look. Oh, everyone's here, she said. Her gaze snapped back to Xiao Ran. But I don't have time for you today. My target is right there. She pointed straight at him. You. All right, she wants me, Xiao Ran told the others. You go first. I'll handle this. Are you sure you can do it alone? The little wolf girl asked, concerned. Xiao Ran smiled and met her eyes. Relax, she's just a bald woman. I've dealt with worse. Hurry, if the world's going to be destroyed, this is not the time to hang around. Good luck, Deadpool called, lifting the dog and flashing a thumbs up. He darted into the subway entrance. The rest gave Xiao Ran quick, worried looks and went after him. Cassandra didn't stop them. Her prey, as she'd said, was only Xiao Ran, the thief who'd taken her treasure. So aren't you going to run? Cassandra asked, narrowing her eyes. Run? Xiao Ran smirked. The one who should be running is you. Cassandra blinked, sure she'd misheard. Then a furnace-hot beam of heat vision tore into her. It slammed her backward, hurling her through a row of buildings. She slammed into the rubble a kilometer away, ashes and masonry billowing around her. She crawled out of the wreckage, panting with rage. Her clothes were scorched away in a gaping hole across her torso. The wound had already knitted over, the skin smooth and unnaturally whole. Through gritted teeth she hissed, I swear, I will tear you into pieces. A shadow passed over her. With a thunderous boom, a figure dropped from the sky and landed before her. You! Cassandra screamed, lunging to rip the newcomer apart. But the next instant, Xiao Ran was standing calmly in front of her, smiling. She stared at her own hands, then at Xiao Ran. Why are you completely unharmed? She spit. Maybe because you're too weak, Xiao Ran said, still smiling. He blurred forward as if teleporting and struck her. The impact sent Cassandra flying again. The force of it kicked up a rolling cloud of dust that coalesced into a long, serpentine dragon of debris stretching over 1,000 meters before dissolving. Xiao Ran shot into the sky. Far below, Cassandra struggled to her feet from the ruins, half her face ripped away, a chunk of her skull missing. She was battered, bleeding, and furious, but she was still standing, and she was still a threat. But in the blink of an eye, those wounds vanished as if they had never existed. Ugh, disgusting, Xiao Ran muttered. Xiao, I'm going to kill you. Cassandra roared from the ground, and a powerful psychic surge tried to seize control of Xiao Ran's body. Too bad, his psychic strength was stronger than hers. Pointless resistance, Xiao Ran said coldly. The next instant, with a thunderous crack, a huge chasm split the ground. Xiao Ran hovered over it, looking down at the blood-soaked figure below. Your vitality is stubborn, he observed, watching Cassandra's wounds knitting together, then turned his head to the side. The portal to the Voidland was still open. Deadpools of every height, size, and gender poured out, wreaking havoc like locusts in a ripe field, pouring their manic energy into destruction. You all just saved me the trouble of finding you, Xiao Ran said with a smile. The next second, bang! He vanished from midair and in less than a heartbeat reappeared on the street he had just left. With a meteor-like crash, Xiao Ran slammed into the group of Deadpools. Shit, was that a meteor? Is that a plane? Is that a bird? No, it's Superman. All eyes snapped to one Deadpool who had shouted. He immediately clapped a hand over his mouth. I don't know why it just came out, he protested. Then a beam of heat vision from heaven to earth swept across the crowd, incinerating dozens of Deadpools in its path. You talk too much. Xiao Ran ripped off his outerwear to reveal a black Krypton battlesuit. A black cape snapped in the wind as crimson heat vision burned from his eyes, cleansing the area. The Deadpools pouring from the portal numbered in the hundreds, maybe 1,000, more than in any movie. Xiao Ran's single blast alone reduced over 100 variants to ash. The remaining Deadpools, instead of fleeing, screamed and charged, brandishing knives and shouting, "Kill Superman!" One fearless Deadpool swung a blade at Xiao Ran. The knife shattered on impact. Xiao Ran was untouched. He punched, and the attacker exploded into a mist of blood. Most Deadpool variants don't have an indestructible body. Even the movie Deadpool, if reduced to a mist of blood, wouldn't survive. Only the comic book version could somehow revive, cursed by Thanos so he would never see death again. The thought made Xiao Ran scoff as he sliced and burned his way through them. He lost count of how many he killed. The slaughter had gone on for nearly 10 minutes. At last, the tightly packed swarm lay finally, utterly dead. Ding! A system prompt rang in Xiao Ran's ears. Congratulations, host. You have achieved the hidden achievement Deadpool Bane. Reward, extraction count +1. Xiao Ran's eyes brightened. It had actually been a hidden achievement. Good. His effort hadn't been wasted. Meanwhile, in the subway station below, Deadpool and Wolverine had already taken care of Mr. Paradox and his men. Deadpool had one foot on Mr. Paradox and was slapping him with a sword sheath while interrogating him about how to shut down the device. Tell me, how do you turn this thing off? Deadpool demanded. You gonna tell me or not, huh? Gonna tell me? Wolverine, unable to watch the clownish theatrics, shoved Deadpool aside. You're trying to make him talk with his mouth covered. How's that supposed to work? He growled. Mr. Paradox, still groggy from his beating, quickly blurted, Okay, I'll tell you how to shut it down. He was terrified of losing not just legs, but worse. He knew too well Deadpool's methods. He began fumbling for the controls. A distant rumble came from above. Sounds like a fierce fight up there. Someone in the station said, peering toward the surface. Turn this machine off now. Wolverine snarled, hauling Mr. Paradox toward the console. Do it. Right now. Mr. Paradox's earlier arrogance had been a product of his position inside the TVA, where he couldn't be fought with powers, and where his cleanup squads made him feel untouchable. Outside, confronted by mutants, vampires, and martial artists, his bravado dissolved. He frantically worked the controls. I'll turn it off. I'll shut it down right away. The 12th update is here. Chapter 64, Annihilating Cassandra, clearing the level again, seeking subscriptions. Someone muttered as a joke, the absurdity of the situation cutting through the tension. Above ground, the battle had reached a boiling point. After slaughtering hundreds of Deadpool variants, Cassandra launched herself back into the fight. Using her matter manipulation, she ripped whole buildings free and hurled them at Xiao Ran. Dozens of structures smashed down. Even the Hulk might have been knocked senseless by such a barrage. Xiao Ran, however, met it with ease. Some buildings were sliced apart by his heat vision. Others he redirected with his own matter control. One of them he casually tossed back like a soccer ball. They fought across the skyline, one flying, the other anchored to the earth, bouncing buildings between them as if they were toys. At that moment, American fighter jets screamed in overhead. They opened up on the two figures below, a hail of machine gun fire tearing the air. The bullets pinged off Xiao Ran as if they'd hit armor. He didn't so much as flinch. In fact, the impacts felt oddly pleasant, like 100 tiny hands kneading his muscles. Cassandra, however, could not ignore them. With a small, irritated motion, she froze the bullets in midair. Another flick of her hand, and the frozen rounds ricocheted back toward Xiao Ran, a neat little deflection. Annoyed, Xiao Ran looked up and unleashed a beam of heat vision. It struck the nearest jet and detonated it in a blaze. Boom. Another jet followed, and another. In the blink of an eye, several fighters were blown to smithereens. Xiao Ran dove, appearing in front of Cassandra in an instant. The woman on the pavement still snarled, unwilling to yield, but he pressed a hand onto her bare scalp and poured his psychic will into her mind, clashing with her telepathy. His power was superior, but not enough to murder her outright from a distance. He could only suppress her psychic defenses. Without that power, Cassandra was just a fragile body. Anyone could kill her with a knife. He simply squeezed the hand holding her head. The fury on Cassandra's face snapped into pain, her scream cut off. "Say hello to your brother for me," Xiao Ran said, leaning close. Then, with a single brutal motion, he crushed her skull, flesh and bone sprayed. Fortunately, his biofield kept the gore off his face. Otherwise, he joked to himself, he wouldn't be Superman, he'd be Homelander. Cassandra's headless body thudded to the pavement, but the system's announcement warned him. System. Cassandra not dead. Xiao Ran narrowed his eyes and something shifted. A translucent double of himself slid out of his form, his astral body. He'd been able to separate it in this world, something he couldn't risk in the Zongman world, where other spirits might seize his flesh. The detached spirit caught sight of Cassandra's weakened soul trying to flee. If it escaped and re-entered another body, she could revive. "Still running?" he muttered, and his spirit pursued. He tore at Cassandra's escaping soul, shredding it into motes until it dissolved. "No!" Cassandra's lingering cry fizzled away uselessly. The earlier psychic battle and her physical death had already sapped her spirit. Faced with Xiao Ran's far stronger astral form, she was finished in a single stroke. Ding. System. Achievement unlocked. Solo kill Cassandra. Reward. Extraction attempts +2. Xiao Ran's astral form remerged with his body. Color returned to his eyes. He felt odd, exhilarated. The out-of-body experience was startlingly vivid. He reminded himself it was only possible here. In the Zongman world, leaving one's body unguarded was a gamble he wouldn't take. With the achievement complete, he still had 24 hours left in this world, and he'd gained 3 more extraction attempts. Essentially 3 free word extractions. He chuckled. Those chances were practically endless. At the subway entrance, he was about to check the area when Deadpool and the others emerged. "Solved?" he asked. "Yeah, solved," Erica answered, then glanced past him. "What about you? Your side over there?" Xiao Ran nodded. "Yeah, all handled." They walked out onto a street that made everyone's stomach drop. The road was nearly leveled, flensing debris and clumps of flesh scattered everywhere. A ruptured fighter wing lay a little farther off, a jagged black remnant in the rubble. It was bluntly all solved. Wolverine looked at Xiao Ran. "Now that the world-destroying crisis is over, what are you going to do?" Xiao Ran didn't elaborate. He wanted to hear others' plans first. Wolverine answered, "I'm going back." He belonged elsewhere. His own world still needed him to make amends. Gambit grinned. "I'm staying." He looked over at Blade. "You in?" Blade shrugged. "I don't care." Little Wolf Girl glanced at Wolverine with a soft, teasing smile. "I want to visit Logan's grave." "Not you, Logan. I mean his grave." Wolverine nodded. Deadpool shifted awkwardly. "Grave? Is the grave still there?" He began whistling and pretended to fuss with a dog, trying to keep the mood light. "I don't know. Maybe I'll stick around a while." Erica gave a small, resigned smile. "I'll probably stay." She looked at the Human Torch. "You? I'll stay," he said without hesitation. The Fantastic Four were gone in his timeline. He was the last. Then the TVA had pruned him. There was nowhere else meaningful to return to. In that case, I'll send Wolverine back first. Xiao Ran produced a sling ring and opened a shimmering dimensional portal. This will take you home. Wolverine hesitated at the threshold. Actually, I'm not exactly in a hurry, he said, but he stepped forward anyway. He paused once more, turning to look at the group behind him, as if trying to memorize every face. Goodbye, someone called. Next time, drinks on me. Don't forget to be a better man when you go back. Don't think about me, because I won't think about you either. They all shouted their farewells in pieces of humor and affection. Wolverine took one long, steady look, then squared his shoulders and walked through the portal with the same quiet resolve that had always defined him. Swish, the dimensional gate snapped shut. Xiao Ran looked at the others. All right, since none of you plan to leave right now, I'll head off first. Let's grab a meal sometime. Without another word, he looked up and with a thunderous crack broke the sound barrier. A dazzling sonic boom cloud ripped across the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he was gone over the horizon. Damn, he's so cool, Human Torch said enviously. So, he left us with all this mess and just bailed? Erica looked at the devastation around them. Everyone was silent. Or, should we ditch? Gambit whispered. No one objected. A few of them quietly slipped away before anyone else arrived. Not long after, a squad of TVA personnel reached the scene. Oh my god, was this place attacked by monsters? Seeing the wreckage, they slapped their foreheads, already bracing for a lot of paperwork. Kosei Island, the Suzuki family villa, a room on the second floor. Xiao Ran opened his eyes. For a split second, he was dazed, then realized he was back. One moment, he had been basking in the sunlight of space. The next, he was back in his bed in Zongman World. Beside him, Kushikawa Shizuka slept soundly, curled around him like an octopus, using him like a plush toy. Xiao Ran glanced at her, then floated up, gently rotated her body, and hung there in midair. With a flick of his finger, his clothes flew over and slipped onto him. Dressed, he eased his feet to the floor and looked down at Kushikawa Shizuka. Forget it. I'll just use an illusion, he thought. He'd planned to send her back to her own room, but it was easier to cover it with an illusion. No need to make a fuss. It was 6 a.m. Everyone else was still asleep. Only Xiao Ran and the villa servants were awake. He opened the door and went downstairs. A servant brewed coffee for him and he went out into the back garden. Facing the morning sun, he picked up a novel, Love Metronome, by Kasumi Utako. The book had sold well, 500,000 copies, and he'd found it on the villa bookshelf. He wasn't usually interested in romances, but since it was by Kasumi Utako, he decided to give it a try. After reading for a while, the servant brought the coffee. Set it down by me, he said, and kept reading. The novel was well written, if not his preferred genre. After a short section, he set the book aside, picked up the steaming cup, and took a sip. This is perfect, he sighed, stretching contentedly. By 9 a.m., the others who'd stayed up late were waking and washing. No one noticed Kushikawa Shizuka emerging from Xiao Ran's room. His illusion made it look as if she had always been in her own room. It was a simple mindscape, different terminology, same effect. Xiao Ran, when did you get up? Sonoko yawned as she came into the back garden and wrapped her arms around his neck from behind, stealing a kiss on his cheek. I got up really early. Did you sleep well? Xiao Ran smiled. I had a nightmare last night. Sonoko frowned. I shouldn't play in horror-themed amusement parks so much. That's how you get nightmares. She brightened. Are we still going today? Of course, we're here. Got to get our money's worth, she said, pumping her small fists. Then she hugged him and whined. Besides, you're here, right? You'll protect me? I even dreamed about you last night. Really? What did you dream about me? Xiao Ran asked, curious. Sonoko's face flushed. I won't tell, she squealed and ran off. Xiao Ran watched her go and shook his head with a smile. She didn't act like the pampered daughter of a wealthy family at all. P.S. The 13th update is here. One more chapter to go, and today's updates are complete. 14 chapters in total, 70,000 words. I still owe 11,000 words in bonus updates, so let's make it 15,000. That's exactly 3 chapters of 5,000 words each, and I'll add them over the next 2 days. Chapter 65. Murder, Startled Ran, Demon Slayer Core, Butterfly Kanai. 10 a.m. After a light breakfast, Sonoko called everyone and they set off. The same limousine from the day before arrived, with the same 6 people inside. Mori Kogoro made his usual excuse to skip it. He'd drunk too much last night and couldn't get up. In truth, he really hadn't gotten up. He was still asleep in his room when they left. The limo drove for about half an hour and pulled into the parking lot outside the amusement park. "Uncle Kawaki, you can head back. Come pick us up tonight," Sonoko told the driver, Kawaki Hito. "All right, miss. I'll be back tonight." Kawaki Hito nodded and drove off. "Let's go. First stop, lunch," Sonoko shouted, raising both hands. It was almost 11 a.m., perfect for lunch. Though they'd had breakfast, it had been light. Everyone was saving room for the amusement park's famed special lunch. Based on last night's disappointing dinner, they were determined to make today better. They entered the park through the VIP channel. Today was the second day of opening, and the crowd was even bigger than the day before. A large electronic display over the entrance showed the park's daily visitor count. When Xiao Ran and the group walked in, it read 53,741. "Over 50,000, and it's only noon?" Ran exclaimed, staring at the number. "This is a lot of people," Xiao Ran agreed. They were still at the main entrance and already felt the crush. Once they were deeper inside, it would be even more crowded. Thankfully, their VIP passes spared them the queues. "Let's eat," Sonoko said, smiling, and pulled Xiao Ran and ran toward the restaurant said to have the special lunch. Senyachi, trailing behind, called, "Sonoko, don't run so fast." Soon the 6 of them reached the restaurant and ordered 6 of the special set lunches. Half an hour later, the dishes arrived and they dug in, the chatter and laughter easing the morning's tension as they enjoyed the meal. Chapter 68. Section 68 lunch was finally served. Slowly, so painfully slowly. The restaurant was packed, and Xiao Ran and the others had used their VIP privileges to skip the line. Otherwise, they would still be waiting outside. It could easily have taken an hour or more. Xiao Ran couldn't understand people who queued for so long just for a meal. Was the food really worth it? He lifted a spoon and sampled the dish in front of him. Its texture was like jelly, the color like coagulated blood plasma. The taste? Just so-so, like something from a run-of-the-mill dessert shop. Not nearly as good as the rumors had promised. "This is mediocre," Xiao Ran said, putting his spoon down, then tried the other dishes. Nothing stood out. Where had all the praise come from? He looked around. Everyone else wore the same expression, disappointed, holding back comments. "You all think it's mediocre too?" he asked. "Ah, Xiao Ran, you think it's mediocre too?" Sonoko exclaimed in relief. "I thought it was just me." Ranchan nodded. "It's definitely mediocre. I thought my taste was off earlier, since so many people said the special lunch was amazing." "It's not good," Kushikawa Shizuka sighed, pushing her plate toward Xiao Ran with a wronged look. "Xiao Ran, you eat it." Xiao Ran blinked. "So if it's bad, you shove it onto me, huh?" At that moment, someone outside the window tapped on the glass. A girl held up her phone with a messaging screen visible and typed a single line. "Is the lunch at this place good?" Xiao Ran understood immediately and shook his head. Sonoko and the others, who'd noticed too, shook their heads in unison. Definitely not good. The food wasn't terrible. It was just that their expectations had been inflated. When you expect 90 or 100 and get a 60, the disappointment stings more than if you'd only expected 50 to begin with. The girl outside saw their negative reactions and promptly pulled her 2 friends away. No point waiting in line if the food wasn't worth it. Around noon, the group left the restaurant, dissatisfaction written on every face. "Let's go check the rides we missed yesterday," Xiao Ran suggested. Sonoko brightened. "Yeah, don't let lousy food ruin our day. Charge!" She grabbed Xiao Ran's hand and ran ahead, laughing. The rest followed, smiling and chasing after them. "I should have just slept in like Uncle Mori," Conan muttered, lagging behind and yawning. By 3 in the afternoon, after trying 3 rides, they ducked into a dessert shop to rest. "What do you all want?" Xiao Ran asked. "I want strawberry." Sonoko raised her hand. "Then mango," Ranchan added. "Can I have 2? Kushikawa Shizuka rubbed her stomach. "I didn't eat enough at lunch." "You can have 2. What flavors?" Xiao Ran asked. "I want, murder!" A sudden scream cut her off as a crowd burst out of an amusement hall nearby, running and shouting about a murder. "Something happened?" Conan sprang to life at the word murder and sprinted toward the commotion. "Conan, don't run off!" Ranchan shouted and chased after him. You all stay here. I'll go check, Xiao Ran told Sonoko and the others, then followed Ranchan. Xiao Ran, be careful, Sonoko and Kushikawa cried almost at the same time. After they ran off, Sonoko turned to Kushikawa with a curious look. Kushikawa-sensei, why do you seem so worried about Xiao Ran? Did you know him before? Eh? Did I? Kushikawa looked flustered. Did I? You called him Xiao Ran, classmate yesterday. Why are you calling him something different today? Sonoko's voice carried a hint of jealousy. She'd thought Kushikawa had been a little too clingy to Xiao Ran earlier. Could she be falling for him too? Sonoko watched Kushikawa warily. Senyachi, sensing the tension, hurried to smooth things over. Sonoko, you're misunderstanding. Shizuka only cares about a prospective student. She gave Kushikawa a subtle look. Kushikawa's face flushed. I haven't actually started working at the school yet, she admitted, lowering her head. She wasn't good at lying and seemed genuinely nervous. Senya Chie was inwardly panicking. If it were anyone else, she might not have been so anxious. But the girl in front of them was a Suzuki. How influential was the Suzuki group? A single offhand remark could cost someone their job. Kushikawa hadn't even officially started yet. But Sonoko wasn't like other heiresses. She'd grown up with Ranchan and had solid values and a kind disposition. She wouldn't use family power to bully someone. Xiao Ran had no idea what exchange had gone on between Sonoko and Kushikawa after he left, but even if he did, he wouldn't worry. He knew Sonoko well enough. As for himself, he had no intention of hiding his flirtatious ways. There were only 24 hours in a day, and he wasn't a time management wizard. If more women crowded into his life, he couldn't keep it secret anyway. Better to be straightforward about it? Would Sonoko leave him because of that? Impossible. He had no intention of letting go of anything that had already bitten. Inside the amusement hall, Xiao Ran ran until he could see the crowd. Conan was on the ground, and next to him was a shocking pool of blood. If Xiao Ran hadn't been able to make out Conan's heartbeat clearly, he would have thought the boy was already dead. After all, with that kind of bleeding, it would be a miracle for a primary school student to survive. But the pool of blood on the ground wasn't Conan's. Conan! Ran shouted as she burst in, her face draining of color. She nearly collapsed. Xiao Ran grabbed her to keep her upright. Don't panic. Conan's fine. The blood isn't his, he said. Not Conan's? Then where is he? He's been knocked out. Xiao Ran walked over and lifted Conan from the floor. His clothes were stained, but there were no wounds and his breathing was even. He was just unconscious. Come out. I know you're there. Xiao Ran called into the shadows. A moment later, a figure stepped into view, blood squelching under each foot. He sneered at them, then licked the stains from his face with a long, grotesque tongue. Heh, so you found me. I must have overeaten earlier, but no matter. I'll have you two next. Rand stumbled backward, pale. Who are you? Me? Human? The thing bared a mouth full of razor teeth. Do I look human to you? Rand stared at the fanged mouth in horror. Your teeth? The creature extended a claw and tapped its lips. For convenience when I eat. Enough. Xiao Ran set Conan down in a safe spot and turned toward the demon. Are you really not going to come out? The demon laughed, amused. Then his expression froze. A soft rustle as someone landed in the open space between them. A young woman stood there, long black hair, violet eyes, a school-like uniform with a butterfly-patterned houri draped over it. How did you find me? She asked, looking directly at Xiao Ran and ignoring the demon, who had gone pale at her presence. Your breathing, your heartbeat, they were too obvious, she said. You knocked Conan out? Xiao Ran asked. No. She glanced at the fallen child and then at the demon. If he'd been the one, Conan would already be dead. Ran clutched Xiao Ran's sleeve and pressed herself closer to him. You're not ordinary, are you? The girl regarded him a moment. I'm Kanai, Butterfly Kane, flower pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps. And you are? Xiao Ran, I'm a student in Class 2B at Titan High. Kanai's brow lifted in surprise, disbelief flickering in her expression. A high school student? I already told you the truth, Xiao Ran said calmly. She considered him for a beat and then gave a small, wry smile. Even so, high schoolers can have unusual talents. Like this. Xiao Ran smiled faintly, reached out and made a quick, grasping motion toward the demon. Before it could scream, the thing simply exploded, blood spraying outward in a spray that immediately hung in the air, frozen as if time had stopped for the mist itself. Kanai's eyes widened. Ran let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She covered her mouth, stunned by the sight of a body detonating before her. "Don't be scared," Xiao Ran told her. "That was a demon, not a human." "A demon?" Ran's voice trembled. "Yeah, it had a physical body." Kanai took in the suspended droplets with a sharp intake of breath. "I can't believe it. To sever a demon like that and leave the blood like that." She shook her head, then sighed. "We do patrol here, but lately they've been coming out to hunt more often. We do our best, but some villages are already deserted." Xiao Ran's gaze drifted past the two of them to the amusement park, to the empty lights and quiet rides. The scale of the problem pressed on him. How many demon slayers were there, and how many had reached the pillar rank? Could they possibly be expected to handle hundreds of thousands of demons? Probably not. At best, the Corps could maintain order in some places, on the surface, and perhaps that was why the demons came to this island instead of the mainland, to avoid clashing with other forces. He glanced back at Conan, still unconscious and peaceful, and then at Kanai. The night felt heavier somehow, filled with things that moved in the dark and hunters who would never stop coming. Chapter 70, Section 70. Unlike on Kosei Island, where there was only one demon slayer corps to deal with, the mainland was another story. If a demon showed up in a city, you could run into people far more dangerous than anything on the island. Even if Kibutsuji Muzan hid in the Infinity Castle, he'd probably be dragged out if things got out of hand. "We've already sent people from the Demon Slayer Corps to handle the recent incidents of demons eating people," Butterfly Kanei said. Xiao Ran nodded. "If you're already on it, then I'll leave it to you." Butterfly Kanei agreed. They were in contact with the official organization on Kosei Island. In fact, the government had even formed a special anti-demon unit specifically for the island. Unfortunately, it was short on personnel, and support from the mainland was sparse. After discussion, the high-ranking members of the Demon Slayer Corps reached a grim conclusion. The people at the highest levels seemed to be subtly allowing the demons to inhabit Kosei Island. They didn't know exactly why, but the only plausible explanation was that those in power valued the demons' extraordinary vitality and near immortality. Everyone feared death, and those in authority seemed more attached to life than most. "All right, we'll be going," Xiao Ran said. "When the island's police arrive, you can meet them." He picked up Conan and started toward the exit with Ran. "Wait a moment," Butterfly Kanai called. Xiao Ran stopped and turned. "Yes? Can I have your contact information?" she asked, taking out her phone. "You have a phone?" Xiao Ran asked, surprised. Butterfly Kanai blinked at his tone. It was an oddly antiquated question. She clearly wasn't living in a low-tech era, and Xiao Ran immediately realized how foolish it sounded. She had a phone with a little butterfly charm on it. He gave her his number. Kanai called him on the spot and only hung up after he answered, and the ringing stopped. "If anything else comes up, I'll contact you," she said, then turned away to check other matters. Xiao Ran gave Conan a look and carried the still unconscious boy out of the venue. Outside, Sunoko and the others were waiting anxiously. Sunoko ran over the moment she saw them. "Xiao Ran, are you all right?" she called, eyeing the boy in his arms. "What's wrong with him?" "Nothing. He fainted from fright," Xiao Ran said, winking at Ran. Ran, who had been shaken by the evening's events, was coming back to herself. She noticed Xiao Ran's look and nodded in understanding. "Conan was scared by the corpse," she said. Sunoko scoffed, looking down at the unconscious kid. "Seriously, that kid ran like a coward. I thought he had guts, but I guess not." Conan, asleep, had no idea he'd already been labeled as all talk and no courage. Kushikawa Shizuka arrived a beat later, pulled back by her friend Senya Chi. If Chi hadn't held her, Shizuka would have dashed over even faster than Sunoko, which would have only made Sonoko's misunderstanding worse. Chi noticed the worried look in Shizuka's eyes as she watched Xiao Ran. "So she likes younger men," Chi thought, hardly surprised. "Xiao Ran, are you all right?" Shizuka asked with genuine concern. "I'm fine," Xiao Ran replied. "It's just Conan who fainted." Sunoko gave them both a suspicious look. "I'm not staying around for this vibe," she said. "Let's go." Xiao Ran glanced between Sunoko and Shizuka and understood the tension. "Anyway, it's a good time for Conan to change clothes," he said. No one felt like carrying on, so when the limousine arrived, they climbed in and headed back to the villa. The murder at the amusement park was now the police's problem. Back at the villa, Kogoro Mori wasn't home. The maid took Conan to wash up and change, while Ran pulled Xiao Ran into the garden. Xiao Ran, what exactly happened? Ran asked, full of questions. The sudden murder, the terrifying man Xiao Ran had called a demon, the woman from the Demon Slayer Corps, and the way Xiao Ran had seemingly taken someone down out of nowhere. All of it had left her disoriented. If she didn't understand, she wouldn't sleep. Sit down, Xiao Ran said, and guided her to a chair. What I'm about to tell you might be hard to accept, but it's all true. I know you probably haven't been exposed to this world before. Ran listened intently. This world isn't as simple as it seems, Xiao Ran began. There are a lot of extraordinary things hidden in the shadows. The demon you saw today is one of those creatures from the supernatural. They've existed for hundreds of years. They feed on humans and need to eat people to survive. Also, they can't tolerate sunlight, so they're only active at night or on cloudy days. But shouldn't ghosts be bodiless? Ran asked. You're right, most ghosts are spirits without a physical body, Xiao Ran said. But ghost is a broad term. There are different kinds. What you saw today was one type, a physical supernatural being. There are also the more traditional ghosts, the bodiless ones. Those usually don't have a physical form, and some are just lingering impressions of past lives. We encounter that kind sometimes in daily life. Ran covered her mouth, shivering. So there really are ghosts around us? Yes, but ordinary people usually can't see them, Xiao Ran reassured her. Only people with special abilities, or those with something like yin-yang eyes, can perceive them. These bodiless ghosts often follow patterns from their past lives or wander aimlessly. The important rule is this: if a ghost doesn't know you can see it, it generally won't attack. But if it discovers that you can perceive it, then it may become hostile. Rand's face went pale at the thought, but she clung to the one comforting fact. As long as they couldn't see these ghosts, or didn't let the ghosts know they could see them, they were relatively safe. Xiao Ran explained the kind of demon they'd met that day. Demons in the Demon Slayer world weren't like the traditional ghosts. They had a lot of specific weaknesses. For one thing, they were afraid of sunlight. Not just ultraviolet rays like vampires. Sunlight itself burned them. They were also vulnerable to scarlet ore. Nichiren blades forged from it could kill them. And, as Xiao Ran pointed out, direct physical destruction could work too. Even Kibutsuji Muzan needed flesh and blood to regenerate. If someone like Xiao Ran were to tear him apart the way he'd dispatched the lesser demon that morning, reduce him to a mist of blood, even the Demon King would be finished. After listening, Ran finally had a clearer picture. She asked curiously, Xiao Ran, are there many people with supernatural powers in this world? Not many, but not none, Xiao Ran answered. Compared to ordinary people, they're definitely rare. He admitted he didn't know everything. The world was complicated, and there were still a lot of mysteries he hadn't unraveled. I see. Ran nodded, absorbing that. Then she took a breath and asked, You hide your abilities so you can keep your peaceful life, right? Something like that, Xiao Ran said. The truth was he was cautious about the major players in this world. If he were already invincible, he wouldn't need to hide. Ran smiled. Don't worry, Xiao Ran, I'll keep your secret. Even if my mom or dad ask, I won't tell. So this is our little secret? Xiao Ran returned the smile. Ran nodded eagerly. Up on the second-floor balcony, Sonoko watched the two in the garden, Ran and Xiao Ran sitting together, laughing and talking. Her eyes widened. No way. Ran's falling for Xiao Ran? She thought, incredulous. She knew how deep Ran's feelings for Shinichi Kudo ran. With Shinichi's personality, most other girls would have given up long ago, but Ran remained devoted, proof of how strong her feelings were. So seeing Ran and Xiao Ran alone in the garden felt like a betrayal. Sonoko felt a sudden rush of competition. She'd already been insecure about Kushikawa Shizuka. That woman's figure and looks were enough to turn heads. Sonoko had hoped her own closeness in age to Xiao Ran might be an advantage, but if Ran was interested too, that advantage seemed to vanish. She resolved to talk to Ran later. If Ran really liked Xiao Ran, they'd have to compete fairly, but Sonoko didn't want their friendship ruined by this. Ran and Xiao Ran came back inside a short while later. They deliberately separated before entering the house, acting as if they hadn't been together. Seeing that, Sonoko only grew more certain something was going on. If there was nothing to hide, why the act? She hurried down the stairs, determined to get answers. On the first floor, Ran had just come in when she saw Sonoko rushing down. Did something happen? Ran asked. Nothing, Sonoko said, feigning casualness. Where did you just go? I couldn't find you. Ran hesitated, then lied. I was just taking a walk in the garden. She wasn't used to lying and felt her heart beat a little faster. Sonoko watched her and thought, as I suspected. She didn't call Ran out on the spot. She was too flustered to know how to handle the conversation without risking their friendship. Then shall we go for a walk together? She asked instead. A walk? Sure. Ran brightened, and the two of them strolled arm in arm back toward the garden. Xiao Ran, who had just come in, watched them go and called after them with a smile. Where are you two off to? To take a walk in the garden, Ran answered. Sonoko made a light snort and drew Ran out the door. Xiao Ran watched them leave, smiled, and shook his head. He'd noticed Sonoko watching from the balcony earlier. I'll talk to her later, he thought. In another room, Conan woke up groggy and realized he was back at the villa, not at the amusement park. His clothes had been changed. Someone had replaced them with a fresh set. He rubbed the back of his head, swung his legs over the bed, and put on his slippers. Then he hurried out of the room, thumping down the stairs 2 at a time. Xiao Ran was sitting on the sofa, chatting with Kushikawa Shizuka and Senya Chie, when Conan barreled in. Conan, where are you rushing off to? Xiao Ran asked. I'm going to find Sister Ran, Conan called over his shoulder as he ran to put on his shoes and dashed back out the door. That kid has endless energy, Senya Chie laughed. Yeah, I'm more worried he has too much energy, Xiao Ran said with a knowing look. He suspected Conan wasn't just being excitable. The boy probably intended to go back to the scene and look for the culprit himself. However, Xiao Ran wasn't too worried. Conan had been the protagonist once. He was inexplicably lucky. Given how often he courted danger, he'd have been dead long ago if luck weren't on his side. Around 5 in the afternoon, the aunties had finished preparing dinner. Everyone gathered in the dining room, ready to eat. That was when Ran realized Conan was missing. Has anyone seen Conan? She asked. Ran searched upstairs and found nothing, then asked the others. Around 4, he ran off saying he was looking for you. Ran, you didn't run into him. Senya Chie looked at Ran. Ran shook her head, bewildered. No, Conan didn't come looking for me at all. Worry crept in. Call him, Xiao Ran suggested. He has a cell phone, right? Right, I almost forgot. Ran pulled out her phone, found Conan's number, and dialed. A few beeps, then the call connected. Hello, Conan, where are you? We're about to eat. Outside, Conan was running frantically. Was a mat. He answered without stopping. Big sister Ran, I'm playing outside. I'll be back soon. You guys go ahead and eat. I've got to go. I need to hail a taxi. He cut the call short and hung up before Ran could ask more. He glanced over his shoulder. No one was following him, and he finally exhaled. That scared me to death. What exactly were those things? Earlier, he'd taken a taxi back to the amusement park to look for the scoundrel who'd knocked him out, who was very likely the murderer in the case. Conan couldn't let someone like that run free. When he got back, though, the park had been cordoned off. Outsiders weren't allowed in. Stubborn as ever, Conan had found a corner to sneak a peek, and that's when trouble had found him. After a while, he'd fled. He didn't dare linger. As evening fell, he hailed a taxi at the intersection and rode back toward the villa area. From somewhere in the amusement park, several pairs of blood-red eyes watched the departing taxi from deep shadows, filled with vicious intent. By 6 o'clock, the sun had set. The taxi stopped at the villa entrance. Conan counted out his fare, hopped out, and ran toward the house, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck making him feel watched. He burst into the Suzuki residence. I'm back! After slipping on slippers, he ran inside. Conan, Ran stormed over, furious. Where did you go? How could you run off and play alone in an unfamiliar place? Conan flushed and lowered his head. Big sister Ran, I'll never do it again. Xiao Ran watched the exchange with a chuckle, almost reaching for his phone to take a picture. You still want another time? Ran planted her hands on her hips. She was genuinely angry. She'd only learned that afternoon this world wasn't as simple as ordinary people and everyday life. There was a supernatural world too, with both benevolent and malevolent powers, and even non-human beings. Xiao Ran had warned her that there were many ghosts on the island. The thought of Conan wandering alone on an island full of ghosts nearly gave her a heart attack. If anything happened to him, how would she explain it to Dr. Agasa? And her father, when she'd called him earlier, all she'd heard were women's voices. She didn't have to guess where he'd gone. Honestly, she'd been trying so hard to patch her parents back together, but her father kept ruining her plans by going off to fool around. How could her mother change her mind? Conan didn't understand why Ran was so upset, but he wasn't about to argue. He knew it was better to seem obedient than to talk back. His contrition worked. Once Ran's anger cooled, she relented. All right, Conan hasn't eaten yet, has he? Hurry up and come eat. Senya Chi's voice was almost pitying. Conan dashed for the table like he'd been pardoned, and Ran could only shake her head helplessly. This kid truly didn't understand how serious things were. By 9 in the evening, several people who'd slept poorly had gone to bed early. Xiao Ran had originally planned to talk to Sonoko, but he smelled the strong scent of the supernatural on Conan as soon as he came back. It lingered on him. Clearly, he'd encountered more than one spirit. Xiao Ran thought, this kid really has 9 lives. Worried that ghosts might come to the villa area that night, Xiao Ran put his conversation with Sonoko on hold. Before he could look for her, Sonoko found him. Xiao Ran, can we talk for a bit? She asked. Sure. Where? He replied. Xiao Ran glanced outside. Nothing seemed amiss. Let's go to the garden. They walked out to the garden. Night had quieted everything. Only the distant crash of waves reached them. Under the streetlights, Sonoko sat on a bench and motioned for Xiao Ran to join her. You sit. She didn't waste time. Xiao Ran, do you like Ran? Why do you say that? He asked. I saw you and Ran talking in the garden this afternoon. You looked very close. Sonoko's eyes grew red. She looked as if she might cry at any moment. And Miss Marakawa, is there something going on between you and her that you're hiding from me? Sonoko, actually, Xiao Ran began, then suddenly frowned and turned his head. Actually what? Wait a moment, we have uninvited guests. Xiao Ran stood up. Sonoko's surprise wiped clean the emotions she'd been gathering. The question on both their faces was the same. Uninvited guests? What are they? Bad guys? Section 73. Just as Sonoko was starting to get curious, Xiao Ran turned to her and said, You should go back to the villa first. It won't be safe out here later. We'll talk about everything else after this. Sonoko froze. Before she could ask another question, Xiao Ran reached into his pocket, pulled out a strange ring, and slipped it on. Her eyes widened. He traced a circle in the air with his finger, and sparks gathered until a glowing ring formed beneath his feet. Is this magic? Sonoko gaped as Xiao Ran walked into the circle and vanished. Xiao Ran, she called, too stunned to move. Xiao Ran reappeared through a dimensional gate, now clad in white battle armor patterned with gold. He hadn't worn it in a while, but his instincts told him tonight would be dangerous. He rarely dressed for a fight unless it was necessary. Xiao Ran, what are you wearing? Sonoko stammered. Go back to the villa quickly. I'll explain after it's over. Small, he said. Seeing she was still in shock, Xiao Ran opened a dimensional gate beneath her feet. Sonoko screamed as she fell through, and in an instant found herself back in her bed. Looking up, she watched the circle seal shut. Xiao Ran, she called, then raced to the balcony. Outside, Xiao Ran rose into the sky and flew off into the distance. Xiao Ran can fly? Sonoko pinched her thigh. The sting proved it wasn't a dream. Her mind spun. Oh my god, Xiao Ran is a Kryptonian? She covered her mouth, glancing around to see if anyone had noticed, and breathed a relieved laughter when they hadn't. I must keep this secret for him. Earlier that day, Sonoko had decided she would talk to Xiao Ran tonight and ask who he truly preferred. If he loved someone else, she planned to step back. She had decided that after much consideration. But now, having uncovered this secret, she changed her mind in an instant. What could be cooler than dating a Kryptonian? She couldn't possibly give him up. If it came to it, she could always share him with Ran. They were close enough. Who said two sisters couldn't both love the same person? The thought made her blush and grin helplessly. Xiao Ran, meanwhile, had no idea he had turned into a comic book hero in Sonoko's head. Then again, in a way it wasn't completely off base. He did carry Kryptonian blood. So if she wanted to call him a Kryptonian, it wasn't entirely wrong. He flew toward the distant tree line and watched shadowy figures burst from the forest, branches whipping as they came. Their eyes glowed red. They moved with unnatural speed and in some cases grotesque form. Just looking at them sent a chill down his spine. "More than I expected," he muttered. Hundreds of them surged forward, using the cover of night and heading straight for the villa area. If their only target was Conan, small as he was, they wouldn't have needed such numbers. They were aiming at everyone in the villa. Someone, or something, was orchestrating this attack. Xiao Ran's eyes flashed. As the demons rushed in, a blinding crimson beam erupted from his eyes. His heat vision carved a charred trail across the ground and swept over the charging horde. Screams pierced the night as the beam lanced through them. The demons burned to ash in an instant. No cells remained to regenerate. Hundreds had charged the villa, but not one made it past the gate before being seared into nothingness. When the last pile of ash drifted away, Xiao Ran cut off his heat vision and scanned the horizon. Stronger presences were closing in. They moved with purpose and power. "They're really not afraid of death," he said, a small grin on his face. A figure materialized first, a man with short, peach-pink hair, golden eyes, pale skin, and dark blue tattoos crisscrossing his body. He tore from the trees at top speed, looked up at Xiao Ran, and his golden eyes burned with killing intent. "Was it you? You exterminated those defective products," he said coldly. "State your name." Xiao Ran looked down at him. "Upper rank 3, Akaza?" The man laughed, revealing sharp teeth. "Human strongman, you are powerful. I hope you last a little while in my hands. Otherwise, this will be meaningless." Xiao Ran gave him a cool look and simply beckoned with a finger. Akaza's smile widened into a snarl. He sprang forward without waiting for his comrades, his feet a blur as he became an afterimage rocketing into the air toward Xiao Ran. Destructive kill, chaotic style. Blue energy flared around him as Akaza launched a blisteringly fast strike. Xiao Ran raised his hand to intercept. "Is that all?" he asked, unimpressed. Akaza's eyes narrowed. He pulled back and unleashed another blood demon art midair. Destructive kill, void style. His fists flickered into afterimages and unleashed 6 lightning-fast blows in succession. Xiao Ran remained unscathed. The corner of Akaza's mouth twitched into a flash of admiration and excitement. This human was far stronger than most. He hadn't felt this rush in a very long time. Destructive kill, leg style. "Stream of light massacre," he roared. Akaza launched himself, kicking out a torrent of light shadow afterimages that converged to envelop Xiao Ran in the sky. Xiao Ran blocked with one hand, deflecting every strike Akaza threw at him without so much as a step back. Destructive kill, leg style, crown splitter. Akaza kicked upward at top speed, but Xiao Ran caught his leg with one hand and violently flung him away. Boom. Akaza crashed to the ground, throwing up a cloud of dust inside a pit more than 10 meters across. Half his body was destroyed, but his ruined flesh regenerated at an alarming rate. By the time he leapt out of the pit, there were no visible wounds left. "If you can withstand this move, I'll admit defeat," Akaza snarled, still confident. He had sensed a gap between them, but relied on his remarkable demonic regeneration to keep him invincible. He also assumed Xiao Ran lacked a Nichiren blade and so could not truly suppress a demon. Xiao Ran's reply was cold and casual, arms crossed. "If your next move is the same as before, remember it, and then go die." The arrogance in Xiao Ran's look made Akaza's eye twitch. The contempt in that gaze, like looking at an ant, set his blood on edge. "I'll gouge your eyes out and eat them later," he spat. "I'd like to see you try," Xiao Ran sneered, openly looking down on him. Rage flared across Akaza's face. "Destructive kill demon core, eightfold core," he roared, launching a more powerful blood demon art. His body became a whirling blue blur, blasting toward Xiao Ran from every direction. Xiao Ran didn't bother raising a hand. He merely twitched a finger, and Akaza froze midair, unable to move. "I remember, you have an even stronger blood demon art. Why aren't you using it?" Xiao Ran asked, voice flat. Akaza's golden eyes flashed with fury and disbelief. He had planned to follow Demon Core Eightfold Core with his blue-silver chaotic refraction if the first attack failed, to catch his foe off guard. He never got the chance. Before he could do anything, Xiao Ran struck. With a single, devastating blow, Akaza was blasted into a cloud of blood and mist, dispersed utterly. Given Akaza's regeneration, being scattered like that meant he couldn't reform. He was gone. Xiao Ran turned his gaze toward the origin of other auras. Two more were approaching, but now they were fleeing, putting distance between themselves and the scene. Running away, he muttered with obvious disdain. Pathetic, not even as good as Akaza. In an instant, his figure shattered the air, accelerating to hundreds of times the speed of sound. He closed on the two upper moon demons in the blink of an eye, Kaigaku, upper rank 6, and Joko, upper rank 5. If Akaza and Kaigaku still retained human shapes, Joko had no human form at all. He was a grotesque abstraction that made Xiao Ran uneasy. Die, you brats! Xiao Ran gave them no time. A single blast of his heat vision incinerated Joko into ash. With one punch, he turned Kaigaku, who was still trying to resist, into a sky of blood mist. Neither of them had a chance. Upper rank 5 and upper rank 6 were dispatched casually, killed before they could fight back. Meanwhile, within the Infinity Castle, an otherworldly space created by upper rank 4, Nakime's blood demon art, the demon ancestor, Demon King Kibutsuji Muzan, lounged awaiting news. The recent actions of the Demon Slayer Corps had irritated him. He was ready to remind those ungrateful humans of their place. Nakime stood nearby, hair flowing, carrying a tray with perfectly prepared human brains. "Place it down," Muzan said without looking. Nakime obeyed, then watched as Muzan monitored his upper moon subordinates through their mental links. What he saw made him bolt upright from his leisurely posture. "How is this possible?" he hissed. "Muzan-sama, has something happened?" Nakime stammered. "Silence," Muzan snapped, and the sharpness of his voice sent her head down and her body trembling. As demon ancestor, he had absolute control. Most of his subordinates feared him so completely they would be annihilated at a word. "Damn it! Damn it!" Muzan kept muttering, pacing. Through his connection, he had watched a human crush Akaza to death from a distance, then immediately saw Gyoko and Kaigaku fall as well, killed instantly, without time to mount a counterattack. How could such a human exist? Why had he come to Kosei Island? Weren't they safe as long as Muzan remained there? The questions tumbled through his mind, and Nakime, though terrified, felt the same shock inwardly. According to Muzan's link, 3 upper moon demons had just been killed. Impossible, unless the Demon Slayer Corps had grown unbelievably strong or had sacrificed everything to achieve it. She could not make sense of it. Muzan fixed her with a fierce look. "Close the Infinity Castle immediately. From now on, no one may enter or leave." Nakime's body shook, but she answered swiftly, "Yes, Muzan-sama." As the controller of Infinity Castle, Nakime could seal it shut at his command. She began the process at once. Chapter 75, Section 75. At this moment, following Muzan Kibutsuji's command, Nakime sealed the Infinity Castle completely. Even the demons outside could no longer return unless she opened it again. She wouldn't dare act on her own without the Demon King's order. Nakime wondered what had happened, why Muzan looked so frightened, when, in the next instant, a whip-like tentacle slammed her aside. "You think I'm scared?" Muzan roared. "Your insolence would be unthinkable." Nakime scrambled to her feet and knelt, stammering an apology. Muzan snorted coldly. "Get out of my sight. Seeing you irritates me." If she weren't still useful, he would have killed her then and there. In his heart, he did feel fear toward that human, but that was not something his subordinates were permitted to know. On a deserted stretch of land 100 kilometers from the village, Butterfly Kanai was hurrying toward home when her steps faltered. She frowned and peered into the darkness ahead. "Show yourself. I've already picked up your scent," she called. A voice answered from the shadows. A figure stepped forward slowly. As expected of the flower pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps, "I have been waiting for you." "Upper Moon 2, Doma." Kanai's face trembled at the sight of him. Any Upper Moon demon was dangerous. The top 3 were in a league of their own. As Upper Moon 2, Doma's strength was second only to Muzan and Kokushibo. He had caused the Corps no small amount of trouble in the past. Kanai had never faced him one-on-one, but from records she knew one thing. Doma was stronger than she was. "What do you foul demons want?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. Doma's rainbow-colored gaze settled on her with unfazed calm. "Your corp has grown arrogant. Muzan ordered us to teach you a lesson. And, if we can kill a few pillars along the way, Muzan will be pleased." He showed no heat in his voice. Kanai laughed despite herself, anger surfacing. "You mean you intend to kill me?" "We'll see," Doma replied without hurry, unfolding an iron fan. He had two of them, his weapons, which had cut down many demon slayers. Tonight, he thought, this flower pillar would be next. Kanai drew her Nichiren blade. Her purple eyes were steady and unwavering. He was the strongest enemy she had faced. If she didn't give everything, she might die here, but she couldn't die. Her sister waited at home. "I will kill you," she vowed. "Very spirited," Doma said with a slight nod, approval without warmth. Then, in the blink of an eye, he vanished from sight. Kanai reacted instantly, slashing. The iron fan and Nichiren blade met with a ringing clash. Sparks flew, illuminating the small circle around them. They traded strikes at blinding speed. Kanai found herself mostly defending while Doma pressed the attack, his expression disturbingly placid, as if he were merely toying with her. "Is this the strength of a pillar?" he murmured. "It doesn't seem like much." Doma lifted a fan. Blood demon art, lotus leaf ice. Ribbons of crystalline ice shot toward Kanai. She met them, her blade a blur, and pushed off the ground to rush him, answering with two upward slashes. Flower-breathing fourth form, Crimson Hanagoromo. Her strikes tore through the air, but Doma's composure didn't change. Ice formed behind her. Kanai spun to block it with Mikage Ume, an instant defensive flourish. Doma's tone remained casual. Good reaction, but witness the end. He swung both fans. Blood demon art, scattering lotuses. Fragments of shattered ice, petal-like, razor-sharp, flew at Kane from all directions. She unleashed flower-breathing. Second form, Mikage Ume, clashing steel and ice in a series of resounding strikes. She retreated explosively, the ground along her path littered with frozen petals embedded like blades. Breathing hard, Kanai felt a sudden drain of stamina. Doma appeared before her, inscrutable. "Are you giving up?" he asked, voice cool. "Is that all you've got?" he continued. "How disappointing." "The battle isn't over," Kanai snapped, refusing to yield. Doma tilted his head as if amused. "In my opinion, it's already decided." He pointed at her with one fan as if naming a future fact. "You will die by my hand." "What on earth are you talking about?" Chapter 76, Section 76 Butterfly. Kanai's purple eyes burned with a cold fury as she cried, "I have a reason to live. You damn demon, today is the day you die." Doma watched her with casual indifference, saying nothing. Then in an instant he flickered and vanished. Metal rang as Butterfly Kanai met his iron fan with her sword. The duel raged on. Doma's power, second only among Muzan Kibutsuji's upper moons, was not an accident. Kanai was powerful, but only to a point. Against Doma, she slowly began to falter as he took the fight seriously. "I can't die," she thought, desperation raw in her voice. "Shinobu is still waiting for me to come home. I'm her older sister. How can I leave her?" She poured the last of her strength into a furious assault, throwing technique after technique at him. Flower-breathing fifth form, futile peonies. Flower-breathing sixth form, whirling peach. Strike after strike flew from her blade, but Doma dodged as if strolling through a garden, each swing of his iron fan casually sweeping her attacks aside. "It's useless," his voice whispered into her ears like a nightmare. "Why do you still struggle? You're going to die anyway. Why not accept it?" "What do you know?" Kanai shouted. How could a demon possibly understand human thoughts? Doma's expression stayed cool. "Is that so? In that case, let me show you my true strength. You'll die by this move of mine." He stepped back in a single smooth motion. Countless ice crystals gathered before him and coalesced into a towering frozen figure shaped like a bodhisattva, hands clasped together. Blood demon art, frozen lotus bodhisattva. The statue opened its mouth and spat a sky full of razor ice toward Kane, while its massive hand became a blade and came down with terrifying speed. She barely evaded the first strike, but the following hand blade closed in instantly. The world seemed to slow for Kane. Am I going to die? In her mind, Shinobu's face floated before her. "I'm sorry, Shinobu. Big sister can't take care of you anymore." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she braced for the end, but death did not come. Kane opened her eyes and saw a tall figure standing before her. The hand blade had been arrested by a single hand. "I'm not late, am I?" Xiao Ran asked, glancing back with a smile. Kane stared, stunned, then let out a shaky laugh. No, you're just in time. That's good, he said, turning to the lotus bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas aren't meant to be used like this. With a single thunderous punch, Xiao Ran shattered the frozen statue into a rain of glittering ice shards. Kanai watched the crystals scatter, her gaze fixed on the tall man until she felt a momentary, helpless awe. Doma landed, composed, and locked eyes with Xiao Ran. Another one. Are you from the Demon Slayer Corps? No, I'm just sightseeing, Xiao Ran said, smiling faintly. So, a busybody, Doma mused. He added, your strength exceeds that flower pillar's, but you'll still die tonight. That line sounds familiar, Xiao Ran replied. A man named Akaza told me that. You killed him, Doma's eyes flashed. I gave him a chance, but he was too weak. What about you, Doma? Upper Moon too? Did you use your full strength in that last move? You want to see my full strength? Doma asked coldly. Xiao Ran shook his head, then looked back toward Kanei. Even if you didn't go all out, you had to have used 60–70% of your power, right? You're nothing extraordinary. I've heard legendary whispers about you, Upper Moons. Kokushibo supposedly towers above the rest. I'd like to see him. Doma feigned hurt. So you underestimate me? If you want to see Kokushibo, you'll have to get past me first. That'll be easy. Almost as soon as he spoke, Xiao Ran was already in front of Doma. One hand lashed out and grabbed his head. Xiao Ran's palm sank into Doma's skull, as if drilling into his brain, because at that moment he was reading Doma's mind. Found it! With a single explosive motion, Xiao Ran blew Doma's body apart. Blood and fragments of flesh sprayed into the air. Doma never learned whose hand had slain him. Xiao Ran had gotten what he wanted. He'd killed Doma and extracted the information about Kokushibo from his thoughts. Then he turned back to Kanei. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Exhausted but uninjured. Can you take me back? If you want, I'll take you, Xiao Ran said without hesitation. He scooped her up. Instinctively, she wrapped her arms around his neck and looked up at him. Hold on tight, he said. A roaring boom split the night as they shot into the sky like a meteor. A luminous contrail unfurled behind them, and then they vanished into the darkness. Inside the Infinity Castle, Muzan Kibutsuji paced alone, having just sent Nikime away. The news hit him like a physical blow. Doma is dead too. He tore the table over in a fit of rage. Useless. All of them are useless. After a wild outburst, he collapsed to the floor, clutching his skull as if it hurt to think. Why? He moaned. Why do you humans always plague me? I left my homeland. I fled to this godforsaken place. Why won't you let me be? Outside the room, Nikime trembled at the sound of his fury, forcing her mind blank. She dared not think anything that might draw his notice. The enraged lord was capable of anything. Far from the Infinity Castle, in a small, isolated mountain village of only a few dozen households, the night was deep. Every home was dark. Every home, that is, except for one at the north edge of the village. Light still glowed from that single house. It was a small Japanese-style courtyard. A red flowering tree stood beside a little pond where two ornamental fish bobbed at the surface, blowing lazy bubbles. Under the eaves, a girl of about 15 or 16 knelt on a cushion, glancing anxiously toward the main gate. Why isn't my sister back yet? She muttered. Shinobu felt a restless unease in her chest, like something big was about to happen. Then, without warning, a figure descended from the sky and landed silently in the courtyard. Shinobu's wide eyes blinked in surprise as the newcomer came down. He left a strong impression on the young girl. She saw that he was carrying someone in his arms, and then she recognized who it was. Sister! Shinobu leapt up and ran over. Shinobu, I'm sorry. You must have been worried, Kanai said as she stepped down from his arms. She smiled and hugged Shinobu, who hugged her back tightly. You came back so late, sister, Shinobu asked when she let go. Kanai didn't mention that she'd run into a powerful enemy. There was no need to worry, Shinobu. I ran into something on the way, she said lightly. Shinobu's attention then fell on the man standing beside Kanai. Sister, who is he? She asked, curious. He's my friend, Kanai replied. Shinobu, you should call him Big Brother, okay? Big Brother? Shinobu eyed him suspiciously. Are you my sister's boyfriend? Xiao Ran chuckled at the half-accusation. Shinobu was only a year younger than Kanei, 16, but she still had a childlike air about her. No, I'm not her boyfriend, he said. Kanei shot him a quick look at the word yet, but she didn't press it. Shinobu circled Xiao Ran with all the curiosity of a child. Then what's your name? How can you fly? Shinobu, don't bother big brother, Kane said. It's fine, Xiao Ran said with a smile. My name is Xiao Ran. You're Butterfly Shinobu, right? Shinobu nodded, then reached out to touch his battle armor. Big brother Xiao Ran, your clothes are so beautiful. Do you always dress like this? Not usually. I only wear this when I have to fight. Normally I wear regular clothes, he answered with a grin. Oh, Shinobu brightened, about to ask another question, when Kanai hurried over and spoke softly. It's getting late, Shinobu. Go to bed. Shinobu flashed a mischievous smile. Sister wants to be alone with big brother Xiao Ran, right? She teased, then darted back into the house and called from the doorway. I won't disturb you anymore. Kanai laughed and shook her head. I'm sorry, she's a handful. It's fine. A little mischief is cute, Xiao Ran replied, sounding slightly formal. Come in and sit for a while. What kind of tea would you like? No, I have to go somewhere else, Kanai said, smoothing a lock of hair behind her ear. Xiao Ran shook his head. Kanai looked startled, then the memory of his earlier conversation with Doma came back to her. You're going to find Kokushibo? She asked. Xiao Ran nodded. Kanai's expression showed surprise. Doma had told him? Demons saw humans as food and usually spied on one another under Muzan Kibutsuji's watch. Why would Doma give a human the location of Upper Moon 1? Kanai briefly wondered if it was a trap, but she didn't know that Xiao Ran had learned Kokushibo's location by reading Doma's memories, not from anything Doma said aloud. Don't worry, I have a plan, Xiao Ran said without elaborating. Reading memories made people wary. It was better left unsaid. Do you want me to come with you? Kanai asked after a moment. Though she was still tired, a rest had brought her strength back enough for a short fight. No need. You should rest and take care of your sister. Xiao Ran insisted. Kanai didn't argue. Then be careful. I will, Xiao Ran said. He opened a shimmering portal behind him, and under Kane's surprised gaze stepped through. With a soft whoosh, the portal closed. Kane felt a faint flush at the memory of him carrying her as he had flown in. Now he had opened a door and vanished. She was no child. She understood what had happened, and she felt her face heat. A small head poked out of the house. Sister, has big brother Xiao Ran left? Shinobu asked. Yes. He had things to take care of, Kanai said, taking a steadying breath before returning indoors. Come on, let's get you washed up. What? I'm not a child anymore. Besides, you're only 1 year older than me, Shinobu protested. Even if I'm only 1 year older, I'm still your sister. Looking after you is my job. Then can you come back earlier next time? Oh, is Shinobu worried about sister? Of course not. Watching his sister Kanai, the butterfly, rush off with a proud look, Xiao Ran found himself smiling. After tonight, this island should be much more peaceful, he thought. From Doma's memory, Xiao Ran had learned that Kibutsuji Muzan had sent Kokushibo to eliminate several pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps. The goal was to kill multiple pillars, weaken their strength, and send a warning. Xiao Ran, who had come through the teleportation gate, had arrived directly at one of the locations targeted for tonight's operation, a small town at the foot of a mountain. Besides Kosei Island's largest city, there were a handful of small towns and many outlying villages. The villages, with their sparse populations and remote locations, were the most vulnerable to demon attacks. If everyone died, it might be a long time before anyone noticed. Compared to the mainland's modernization, much of Kosei Island still felt decades behind. People labored from dawn to dusk and lived simple lives. If not for the demons, it really would have been a peaceful place to retire. When Xiao Ran arrived, the town lay in ruins. Buildings were smashed and burning. In the distance, fires still licked at the night sky. He could hear children's cries and women's pleas. Entering through the east gate, everything along his path was a scene of tragedy. Bodies slashed by blades, some bisected, others only half intact. Is the fighting really this fierce? He wondered. A building engulfed in flames blocked his way. Xiao Ran waved a hand, and the burning structure split down the middle, clearing a path. Emerging between roaring walls of fire, he was immediately struck by a dark figure flying toward him. He reached out and caught the figure. It was a man. Cough! Cough! The man gasped. Thank you, he added, then coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood. Sanemi Shinazugawa, his white hair plastered with sweat and dust, thanked Xiao Ran for catching him. Xiao Ran noticed a pinwheel-like pattern on the right side of Tsunemi's face, a Demon Slayer mark. To activate it, one's body temperature needed to rise to 39 degrees and the heart rate to exceed 200 beats per minute, placing immense strain on the body. It was said those who awakened the mark rarely lived past 25. By normal standards, Tsunemi shouldn't have been able to activate it now, but in this Zongman world, where the whole Demon Slayer plot had been moved to Kosei Island, anything was possible. "You know about the Demon Slayer mark?" Tsunemi asked, squinting at the man who had caught him. The newcomer's armor was immaculate, white with gold patterns and a snow-white cloak, standing out oddly against the ruined town. His appearance made it clear he was no ordinary person. An ordinary person couldn't have caught Tsunemi mid-flight like that. "Yes, it puts a lot of strain on you. I suggest you turn it off," Xiao Ran said calmly. "Not yet. I still have a fight," Tsunemi replied, glaring toward the thick smoke in the distance. A gust of wind swept through and cleared the smoke, revealing several wounded demon slayers on the ground and a monstrous figure standing amid them, 6 eyes staring from his face. Kokushibo wore the armor of a Sengoku period samurai. Once a man with a sense of justice, jealousy of an outstanding younger brother, and the influence of Kibutsuji Muzen had twisted him into what he was now. Those 6 eyes were disconcerting. Being stared at like that made Xiao Ran uneasy in a way only anyone who'd experienced it could understand. "Get out of here. You can't handle him." "His fight is with me," Tsunemi warned Xiao Ran, then dashed forward. With his Demon Slayer mark activated, Tsunemi's strength was amplified, but it was still no match for a full-powered Kokushibo. In moments, Kokushibo sent Tsunemi flying with a single slash. If Tsunemi hadn't had the mark, that blow would have cleaved him in two. He barely had time to block. This time, no one caught him. Tsunemi crashed to the ground and rolled to a stop, coughing and digging his nails into the dirt as he fought to stand. "It's useless. You are no match for me," Kokushibo said coolly, his 6 eyes focused on the stubborn pillar. Around him lay other injured demon slayers, some even pillar level, but together they could not fell him. That was the true value of Upper Moon 1. His strength placed him in a category between Muzan himself and other demons. "Damn it! I won't let you hurt my comrades!" Tsunemi roared and surged forward again. Wind-breathing, ninth form, Idaten Typhoon, he shouted, spinning and slashing in a furious storm of wind blades around Kokushibo. Blades cut the air, seeking the demon's center, but Kokushibo held his katana with one hand and, with minimal motion, repelled every strike. When Tsunemi finished his flurry and his body stiffened, Kokushibo, who had stood motionless, flashed forward and slashed. The blow knocked the Nichiren blade from Tsunemi's grip. Kokushibo followed with a kick to the stomach and sent him flying dozens of meters. Tsunemi slammed into a building and was buried under collapsing wood and tiles. Kokushibo turned and looked at Xiao Ran. "I can feel you are strong. Come, fight me." The injured demon slayers left on the ground watched Xiao Ran. Whispers spread among them. "Who is that?" "No idea. He looks like a helper. Can he beat Kokushibo?" "No, Kokushibo is too strong. He can't win." One wounded man, clutching his head, groaned. "He can't win." "Pull yourself together," the others snapped, angered by his despair. "Shut up," Kokushibo said, swiveling his head. His 6 eyes swept coldly over them. "Losers should simply wait to die. Now it's a battle between him and me." He turned his attention back to Xiao Ran. "Show me your strength." With those words, the katana in his hand swung. A streak of blade light cut through the air toward Xiao Ran, but Xiao Ran didn't dodge. He stood as if rooted. "What's wrong? Why isn't he dodging?" someone cried. "Dodge! Hurry!" Another yelled. Several demon slayers couldn't bear to watch and turned away, expecting the scream that would follow, but it never came. Instead, Kokushibo's voice betrayed disbelief. "He caught it?" Kokushibo stared as Xiao Ran had seized his slash with one hand, caught the katana with flesh and bone. He'd expected a dodge, perhaps a clash, but never a bare-handed catch. The arrogance of Kokushibo found itself jolted. "Earlier, someone named Doma told me you are very strong," Xiao Ran said lightly. He flexed his fingers. With a sharp crack, Kokushibo's katana snapped in two. Xiao Ran glanced down at the tip of his blade, then smiled at Kokushibo. Seems he was exaggerating. Kokushibo's 6 eyes widened. "What did you say?" he snarled, fury barely contained. I said you are too weak. Me? Weak? Xiao Ran replied with an indifferent lift of his chin. Kokushibo laughed, then roared and swung his blade with all his might. The strike seemed unstoppable, until it wasn't. There was a thunderous impact, and Kokushibo was sent hurtling away, smashing into a building several hundred meters off. Before anyone could react, Xiao Ran tore through the air and reappeared in front of him as if he'd teleported. He planted his foot down and stomped. The shockwave hit like an earthquake. Buildings within several hundred meters of the impact crater collapsed into rubble. Dust and smoke punched into the sky. From the distance, members of the Demon Slayer Corps clambered to their feet, staggering and coughing, staring at the devastation in disbelief. Kokushibo, he got sent flying that easily? One of them muttered. Who is that man? Another whispered. Can this really mean we're saved? A nearby ruin suddenly exploded. People coughed and shielded their faces as Sanemi Shinazugawa, bloodied and battered, clawed his way out from under the wreckage. Where's Kokushibo? He called. A demon slayer pointed to the cloud of dust and smoke. Slowly, a figure emerged from the haze, dragging something behind him. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Xiao Ran in his white and gold battle armor. Slung over his shoulder, half mangled and almost unrecognizable, was Kokushibo. The Hishoku Koku he had wielded was gone. Xiao Ran tossed Kokushibo forward. The upper-ranked demon hit the ground hard in front of the core. Several demon slayers coughed, blinking through swollen eyes as they looked on. Kokushibo's ruined flesh began to knit and crawl with regeneration. He wasn't dead yet. He's still alive, one of them cried. Before anyone could act, a crimson beam sprang from Xiao Ran's hand and struck Kokushibo. The demon, who had seemed invincible only moments before, was reduced to ash. Xiao Ran retracted the beam, stepped over the pile of gray dust, and looked down. Upper rank 1, doesn't seem like much, does he? Xiao Ran murmured. Sanemi and the other demon slayers were speechless. Not because Kokushibo was mediocre, far from it, but because the man who had just walked out of the smoke was on an entirely different level. The same Kokushibo who had mauled them moments earlier had been taken down without so much as a struggle. The gap in power was staggering. Sir, wait, several of them called as Xiao Ran turned to leave. Please, tell us your name. We're eternally grateful. You saved our lives. They looked at him with tearful gratitude. If he hadn't intervened, they would have been wiped out, Sanemi included. Even the usually short-tempered Sanemi regarded Xiao Ran with reluctant respect. Just call me Xiao Ran, he said. Those demons were unlucky to run into me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have interfered. He wasn't being humble. He was blunt. If the demons hadn't chosen to raid this villa district tonight, he likely would have been asleep, or at home helping Kushikawa Shizuka with math problems, anything but here. It was coincidence, pure and simple. Their luck had been good. Their foes' luck had run out. Please accept our thanks, the demon slayers insisted, bowing deeply. Xiao Ran shifted his weight awkwardly. He hadn't meant to become their savior. By the way, he said suddenly, do you know where Kibutsuji Muzan is? They exchanged looks and shook their heads. We've been trying to find him too, one answered. He always hides in the shadows. No one knows his location. He's probably hiding in Infinity Castle, Xiao Ran concluded, and without waiting for more, he produced a sling ring and opened a dimensional gate. Through the shimmering portal, they could see a disorienting world where up and down, left and right seemed inverted. Just looking at it made them dizzy. We're leaving. The rest is up to you, Xiao Ran said, gesturing to the stunned core, then stepped through the gate. In an instant, he was gone, and the portal sealed shut. The Demon Slayer members remained rooted to the spot, staring where he had vanished. After a long moment, one of them murmured, Is that the legendary Infinity Castle? Sanemi gave a sharp look and frowned. It looks like it, he said, trailing off. The implication was clear. Infinity Castle was Muzan's lair. Xiao Ran was walking straight into the enemy den, perhaps to face the demon ancestor himself. They remembered the power that had just been displayed, and for the first time in a long while, hope and fear tangled together in their chests. Could one man truly do what generations of demon slayers had failed to accomplish? I hope Mr. Xiao Ran succeeds. Yes, even if he can't eliminate the demon ancestor, he should at least retreat safely. Mr. Xiao Ran is strong enough that Kokushibo didn't last 2 or 3 moves against him, If it comes down to the demon ancestor, it shouldn't be much different, right? Damn it, we're all badly injured. If we weren't, we'd be helping him right now. All the Demon Slayer Corps members could do was silently wish Xiao Ran luck. They couldn't even find the Infinity Castle, let alone go inside to help. If they didn't get in the way, that would be enough. Infinity Castle. It was a city larger than a small town, a place where everything was inverted and defied sense. Xiao Ran stood on a floor in front of a Japanese-style building with an antique look, like a shop, but the whole castle was unnervingly silent. No voices, no figures, and everything around him was flipped. Streets and buildings alternating between upright and upside down, left and right. The odd, chaotic arrangement made anyone stare until their mind protested. Xiao Ran didn't get dizzy. His superbrain could instantly receive and process billions of stimuli from across the world. This kind of spatial confusion was child's play. After a quick analysis, he had a general grasp of the Infinity Castle. Now he only had to find one thing. Where was Kibutsuji Muzan? He unleashed his super hearing. A few distant sounds resolved into two voices. First a woman's, then a man's furious roar. There was no third voice. Two people. No, two demons. The woman has to be Nakime, Xiao Ran thought. The man has to be Kibutsuji Muzan. Xiao Ran didn't like waiting for trouble to come to him. If someone provoked him and was weaker, he preferred to finish it at its source. Cutting the grass and pulling up the roots, he did it not out of paranoia of future revenge, but because he didn't want his peace disturbed. A few bugs crawling around and bothering him were intolerable. So when demons attacked his villa, they sealed Kibutsuji Muzan's fate. Deep inside the Infinity Castle, in a palace-like chamber, Nakime stood at the entrance, trembling as she reported to the enraged master inside. "Reporting, Master Muzan, someone has intruded into the Infinity Castle." "What?" The door burst open, and a red-eyed Kibutsuji Muzan appeared. He grabbed Nakime and pulled her close, staring at her as if she were an annoyance. "What did you say? Someone invaded the Infinity Castle?" Nakime shook with fear but managed, "Yes, Master Muzan." "Bastard!" Muzan shoved her so hard she smashed through the wooden wall behind her and tumbled more than 10 meters before grinding to a halt. She coughed and scrambled to her knees, head bowed, too frightened to make a sound. Kibutsuji Muzan, pacing not far from her, roared, and yet his eyes were full of a different fear. "No, I need to leave. I need to find a place to hide." Muzan hadn't survived this long because he was invincible. He survived because he was cautious. Whenever he faced someone superior, he retreated and hid, sometimes for decades or a century before daring to peek out again. He had lived long enough to outlast people like Yoriichi Tsugikuni. He'd never risked provoking truly overwhelming foes. If he had, even hiding on Kosei Island wouldn't have saved him. Now, he had seen what Xiao Ran could do, make Kokushibo, his strongest subordinate, look like a toy and be eliminated with ease. The sight terrified Muzan. Even though his own strength exceeded Kokushibo's, it wasn't by a margin large enough to guarantee safety. Kokushibo's failure was partly because Muzan controlled his creations. Yet if Xiao Ran could beat Kokushibo so casually, Muzan imagined himself no better off. He panicked. He wanted only to get away, find a place no one could ever find him, and wait decades to see whether his adversary still lived. Longevity had always been his trump card. If he survived long enough, even someone as unstoppable as Yoriichi had turned to dust. So Muzan acted on that belief. To evade detection, he severed more than half of his body, disguising the detached half as his original form, while the remaining piece rapidly regenerated into a new whole. "This will work," he thought. "That human will never discover that the real me has already fled." Then a voice sounded behind him, calm and almost amused. "Cicada shedding? Not a bad idea." Muzan spun around. A man had appeared from nowhere, white armor patterned with gold, a snow-white cape fluttering, though there was no wind. Muzan's eyes widened, and pure terror showed on his face. Xiao Ran smiled at the sight of the demon ancestor, the so-called worthless boss. The nickname fit. He hadn't even fought, and was already trying to run off. His caution was extreme, so extreme, Xiao Ran thought, it reminded him of Shu Fu from the Fengyun world. "Kibutsuji Muzan, I've heard a lot about you," Xiao Ran said lightly. His gaze drifted to the other figure. There was a woman kneeling, head bowed and trembling. That had to be Nakime. At first glance, she looked like a frightened young girl, but the facade hid something monstrous. She had only one eye, an enormous single eye that took up almost half her face, making her look more monster than human.